live or anything, folks, but just to say we are here today on a talk on ageless wisdom with Arayun. I probably pronounced his name wrong, and he's now going to correct me. So, as we get started, I want to just say I'm going to lead this discussion first of all with some questions, and I'm going to try and we're really looking at why, what ageless wisdom has got to do with now, the moment of now and today. And I'm going to explore some of those things through Ira's expertise, and he'll also tell us a little bit about his workshops, not only in World here, but also his real life stuff, which is cool, and we want to promote that also. So hopefully everyone, if you could please take a seat, get your voice on, and hear us wherever you are, we should now begin. So welcome, Ira. How great to see you here again, and it's been a long time since you did a workshop for us, hasn't it?
Thank you for having me. Yes, it is a couple of years ago. It was a long time in the olden days, like I don't know, 8 years ago or something like that.
Yeah. Indeed, and that's what I was trying to remember, really, that the last time you did something for us was a very long time ago, before that, I think.
Yeah.
And that was going well. What was that you were doing here so long ago?
Back then I was mainly with organization. I installed um, the security system back then because there was a lot of griefing going on.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
I remember
interestingly,
this. We talked
it
about that.
doesn't do happen so much anymore, does it?
No, I don't think it does. I think griefing has changed.
Yeah.
That's my experience, and people here might want to remark otherwise, around the circle here. And I've not seen much of it, actually. And I did see it once in a circle, maybe a couple of months ago, when someone got a bit evangelical. And although we're all okay with various diverse views of faith, this person was going a bit personal, so we had to sort of close that one down, shall we say. But I mean, there's some other people here today that run Sims, and like I know Sedona's here and Lyle, and other people who run Sims here might want to comment on their experience of griefing, but I've seen it a lot less. So here we
Yeah.
are. Yeah, well, here we are now, and introducing Ageless Wisdom Reloaded for 2018. So maybe, Era, just tell us first of all a bit about yourself. I'd like to know a bit about you, actually, and how you came across this path and your kind of journey with that.
Yeah, well, interesting that you ask how did I come to this path. The point with the ageless wisdom is that it is the unification of pretty much all the paths, because the ageless wisdom is that which is underlying pretty much all the religious texts that are delivered through time, through history.
Mm-hmm.
So I should say it's the inherent truth of all those religions that we mankind have. That probably does not include all the cult stuff whatsoever, but the traditional ones. If you know what to look for, if you know the story, and if you know what to look for, then you can find that material and those inherent truths pretty much through all those scriptures. Be that what we are used to in the Western world mostly, which is the Bible, or be that the Quran of the Muslims. You can find the ageless wisdom in the Torah. The Kabbalah, if you look at it, is pretty much the exact same thing as the Tree of Life in as described in the Edda. The Edda is that book of Odin who stole the runes. Um, if you look at the story of Isis, Osiris, and Horus, it's telling the story of the Trinity. The same is with the Mayan and those South American religions, who's talking about the sun mainly. And it's even though it is using very different languages and very different pictures, very different terminology, because it is emerged through different cultures in different times, serving different needs of the people in those times when they lived in the area where they did their life experience and their development in. Um, but inherently, it is pretty much boiling down to one and the same story. So the question how I did get to this path um, is in so far not really valid, as this is all the paths there are. In fact, you can imagine this as, think about the River Nile. The River Nile in the
Mm.
beginning is a huge
Yes.
river. Like
Hmm.
that is usually the religion or the path that you're on when before you make your own choice, and that is usually the so-called mainstream that you grow up in.
Yes.
For most of us in the West, that would have been Christianity. For many others, at these points, at these times, it is Muslimism, Islamism.
Yes.
For others again, it's maybe Jewish. For others again, Buddhistic or Hinduistic.
Mm.
So that's the culture in which you emerge as an individual. So
I
first of
see.
all, that's usually what you go with. And at some point you realize, okay, there is more to this. This may be a right answer, but there is other answers too. And so there is more to be found that than this particular one thing that is just around me that everybody's talking about. And so you go on this particular journey that you've been talking about and
Mm.
try to find what they usually call your own truth.
Yes.
And so if you then think about the delta of the Nile,
Yeah.
you have the many streams, the many different paths, and there's a myriad of paths that are seemingly so different. And it's like, there's islands in this river delta of the Nile you can spend a lifetime on nearly, right? There is branches of religion and spirituality um, that you can
Yes.
spend many lifetimes on, and we
Mm.
all do that
Hmm.
for a certain while, until it all boils down to those inherent truths, and we finally, after those many paths which appear to be so different, we reach the one ocean of truth.
Yes.
And if I say the one ocean of truth, we always should be aware of that. If somebody says the one truth, it might be a really dangerous thing, especially if after that directly comes that is my truth, that is our truth, or something like that. To make a distinction here, uh, this one truth of which I pretend it to be one truth, I'm just saying that, and we have yet to find out if that really is that way. But I'm just saying that there is this one truth which can appear in myriads of forms. Like this particular truth that we can study here in this field may appear for you in this and that way. For someone else, it may appear in an entirely different way. For somebody else, it may be again something entirely different. So you never really know what's going to happen or what the story will be. But you can, know a little, you can learn a little of um, to understand where you really are in a particular cycle of something.
Yes.
And if you know where you are, then you can eventually see what comes next or what might be next. And you might be able to support this thing, whatever it is, um, in ways that it might find its own expression and its own purpose. So this would then be the practical application of
Yeah.
knowing these inherent truths.
Okay, so let's look at how the world of today is and the relevance of this. So today's world is full of, um, well, Google is a big part of spiritual searching nowadays. People search outwardly and online and into different places, and they get into all sorts of teachings. YouTube is full of a phenomenal amount of New Age teachers, also who promote their Thailand abodes as well. There's a lot of it around the place, and here at Mystic, we are all about kind of like the sort of meeting point of different opinions, faiths, belief systems, and so on. So to find something which is intrinsically real and true across all things, like the origin point, or like the sort of the thing before all the branches, as such. What are those key essential things, would you say, kind of these principles that are universal and that can apply? And I do obviously understand that a lot of faiths have quite concretized opinions, and that's appropriate for those people too. It's fine. But are there some things that are really underlying everything that you could pull out as being something that's true across all?
Yes, sure. Yeah, sure. As I said, if you know the story, if you know the wisdom as such, if you have studied this for a number of years and kind of know the narrative of it, then you can find parts of it and read the wisdom right out of pretty much any book. This boils down, as you said, to certain, for one part, to understand and study certain basic laws that are governing this universe, which are pretty much described and the same in pretty much all the religions there are, as I said. So, for one, we have the law of karma, which is called from the Hindu texts of the Bhagavad Gita. But we know the same principle, for example, in the Bible. There it is called you reap what you sow. What you sow is what you reap. And this principle, as you, I think, would know, is something that you can find pretty much throughout everywhere you go. This is something that is more or less known, that well, what you put out there in a way is sort of what comes back according to this law of balance, as it is called as well, which as such is is really part of the studies of the ageless wisdom, and in particular of this class, this nature of the soul class that we probably will be talking about later on, is to understand these laws. Another of those laws is the law of evolution, which means everything is striving towards a certain goal. In some way or fashion, it evolves. Yeah, nothing really stands still. You see this in biological species as they emerge, as they evolve, and continuously grow into newer forms that are more adequate to the inherent consciousness. Because when the consciousness evolves, eventually the form does not serve that consciousness anymore. And this point will be reached pretty much surely at some point. And so the form has to vanish, and there has a new form to be built in order for that consciousness to be in there and to grow in there. And so this would be very broadly, the law of evolution.
Yes.
Another law that is there that might be interesting is the law of periodicity, as well, something that we are quite familiar with. As I already said, nothing is moving, everything is evolving.
Yeah.
And so you can learn over time that everything has its inherent cycle. So we know after day comes night, and after night comes day.
Yes.
The same is with ebb and flow. We see the moon gets fuller until it is full moon, then it is waning until there is nothing that we can see, perceive. The sun, as we said, getting dark and bright. We have female cycles, a very common one. We have cycles even in males, or in non-gender specific parts. We have a whole year, we have summer, winter. So, you see that this thing really goes on and about through all scopes. If you go up, you can see the planets evolving around the sun.
Yeah.
And the sun itself moving forward in certain cycles. They go through star signs. It's all forth and back and forth and back, and all has its own inherent cycles. And as I said, if you learn those cycles of life, which, for example, are very much described in the Kabbalah, But as well in other systems, for example, the tarot is not a fortune-telling instrument. The tarot just tells you, okay, this you are here at this point, and you know, if you want to go there, then these are the steps, or this is the development that is needed. And so if you learn cycles, if you understand the life cycles of the things around you that happen around you, then you probably might be able to assist those things, these forms, in their unfoldment of consciousness to the greatest good of the highest number. And this is how you, through the application, through the practical application of that knowledge, yeah, more or less become a servant to the greater life that you are part of, if that makes any sense.
Right, yes. So just a few things you mentioned there. I'm going to link in some of the chat going on in Maine. Oh, someone's just come and sat next to me. Hello there. Wasn't expecting that. Just bear in mind I'm filming this right now, folks. So if anyone's IM'd me or I can't catch any of the IMs right now, I'm just going to... My YouTube is stuck on the screen right now here. So some comments I'm taking out from main chat. And anyone who's going to write in main chat, I will read your comment out, okay? So do feel free to contribute there. Toya mentioned earlier on, and this is not too far from what you said about cycles and orbits and the periodicity of, you know, how things are always moving. So we do live in a solar system where there's repeating cycles, and then on the microcosm of Earth there is a cycle here of Earth rotation, and we have a seasonal cycle also. And in the body there are also cycles as well. There are physiological cycles, and everything is based on this motion and movement. So if you think about, you know, life as we're born, us being like a unique fractal of our own, you know, we're a very unique creature. Every moment of the day is entirely unique for all of us, and the perception we have is entirely unique. Some of us who are born, you know, in one country, maybe come from another country, or born in one faith and yet are around people of other faiths, have no choice but to integrate and become part of those things. And so some of the comments made in the main chat, I'll just link in with this. Toya says, all those lifetimes of truth seeking result in much more. All the friends and people we meet and love and interact with along the way, these connections have an incalculable effect on us in the universe. That's from Toya, thank you, hope you're well. Moss says it's a kind of a web, in her opinion. One story connects to the next with common threads, but there are nodes of wisdom where the stories intersect. That's very interesting, and that probably comes again through also our connections with people. So if you can see that kind of effect of, you know, it being very much a unique journey, and then tied into some of the comments and things you've said, my understanding of, you know, ageless wisdom is some of the schools of it. I'm familiar with Theosophy, for example, familiar with Alice Bailey, and also Krishnamurti as the kind of people who represent these schools of thought. And there's in England, here in London, there's a place, the Theosophical Society is not far from where I am.
Yes.
So they do talks all the way around the year, and one of the great things about it is there's a lot of diversity and interest. And so, you know, those of us who are curious, intellectually curious, will read around all these different pathways. So you look at things like, you know, things like you mentioned astrology, kind of there. Astronomy came up. You mentioned some of the mystical paths, mentioned the Kabbalah, and so on. So there's lots of things to take in. But my question would be, how do we synthesize and integrate that in ourselves? We're complex beings living day-to-day lives, functioning with it. It sometimes can get a bit overwhelming. You know, we can take a lot of philosophy in, and that's the way of the mind. The mind does that. So I thought perhaps maybe you could talk about this, like the idea of the three bodies, and maybe how we can integrate parts of ourselves better. Like our minds have lots of ideas and opinions and views. Oh my God, there's all these things that are going on. And there's like the soul, which is like a unifying agent and can pull things together. And then there's like the body, which is just a whole sort of another separate part of it. So maybe you could elaborate on this idea of the bodies and how we can best go about integrating and synthesizing the things we are as individuals.
Yeah, sure. So let's start with the basic philosophy of the three worlds of human endeavor, as we call them, as they are the etheric, the astral, and the mental plane. Now, we humans comprise of altogether 5 parts, and there will be an introductory class about that next weekend. Anyway, we comprise of 5 parts, of which the first 3 are the bodies that we are living in. So what we know about those bodies, what we are usually being taught, is first of all, evidently, the physical part of it. That is what we call the elemental, the earth elemental, and that is part of the etheric body. Although the part that we see and that we can touch, that we can feel actively, is just the lowest emanations of this particular etheric vibration. So if we go up a little bit in frequency, then we find the etheric grid, the etheric network, which is something that is brought forth in Kirlian photography. I'm sure most of you have seen these bluish pictures that show, yeah, something that might be interpreted as the aura or something like that. So this Kirlian photography shows the etheric network of whatever is being photographed. The interesting thing is, if you, for example, take a leaf and make a picture of that, and afterwards you cut a part of the leaf, and you make the same Kirlian picture again, you still see the whole leaf in the picture.
Oh, yeah.
That means that even though the physical part has been severed, the vital energy of that takes a while to accommodate to that.
Right.
Yeah, first of all, the vital energies, the vital network is still up and is still the same as it was, but yeah, it's not having any material basis, so over time it will retreat and dissolve and accommodate to the newly given form. So this is the etheric grid, the etheric network. Our etheric body, it has the same shape as we do, and it's probably about 2 inches bigger than we are, but it has pretty much the same shape. It is the electrical impulses of the nervous system, this magnetic field that is built by the electric energy that is flowing through our nerves.
Yeah.
And that is actually that which vitally connects everything with each other. So as we I was about to say, as we eat a lot of plants and from my point of view, hopefully not too many animals. But as for example, we eat plants, we integrate their life energy. Yeah, same of course goes for all kinds of animal products, be that milk and such, as well as for meat. I mean, theoretically, I'm just thinking, if you would eat rocks, could you absorb the absorb the light energy in them? I'm not exactly sure.
Well, apparently you can.
Probably you can. I'm not exactly sure about that, but
yeah.
I don't suggest trying that. It might be somewhat uncomfortable. So, but you know, that prana that has been taken from that has been integrated by those plants and by those products that we intake, then becomes our energy. Although we are to a certain degree as well able to take in prana and vital energy on ourselves, on our own. And in various ways, this network of lifelines, if you think about the geomancy in the earth, you know, whatsoever energy lines that go through the soil that
ley lines
we're living in, ley lines, that is part of the etheric grid, for example.
Okay.
And there is various iterations of that where you can really see this is the vital energy, this is the life force, the life energy that we all live off. This, by the way, for your for a part of trivia for today, this etheric energy is what the Jedi refer to as the Force.
The Force.
Yeah, whereas this is an arbitrary usage of the word force, because
Yeah,
the ageless wisdom is using the word force for the next frequency, which is that of the astral plane.
I see.
So the astral plane and or our astral body
Yeah,
is that place where we process our emotions. This is the astral emotional body. It's of ovoid shape. It is usually, probably you can say, maybe like 2 or 3 feet bigger than we are, but it can highly fluctuate. So it can be really big, in group events, in mass events, it can, merge with others and become, this mass emotion that might go around. If you think about a mass panic in a negative form, or as well as some kind of mass happiness in I don't know, in the church maybe, or something like
yes,
that.
yeah,
People all dance and sing or something.
yeah,
So there's this emotional part of us that is very much sensitive as well to all sorts of influences from the outside. And so it is if you think about a bubble, if you think about a soap bubble, and the surface of it keeps always moving, right? It never really stands still. And this is kind of how our astral body is always in motion. There's always emotions in and around us, even if we're in a relative relaxed state. Still there is emotional stuff that is somehow going on somewhere on the sub level. So that is, because there is all sorts of traffic going on in the astral plane, and we're always affected by pretty much all the emotions that go around in
oh,
this world.
mm-hmm.
That's not even locally
Sure,
limited, because if you think about a mother, how she knows that something is happening to their child, like on the other
sure,
side of the world, um, there are no boundaries for this.
okay,
And so this is then the second layer, the second body that we have, the second plane, or the astral plane.
yeah,
And this is a distinction, a very important distinction that we are usually not taught to make.
mm,
Like I don't find this very much in any kinds of instructions out there. The distinction between physical sensation and an astral emotion.
right,
Whereas, of course, they do interact, and a physical sensation can cause an emotion, and the other way around. And it usually does. But it is two different things happening on two different planes in two different bodies, in two different parts, or frequency ranges of ours. So the third part of ours is the mental plane, and this is something that we are quite familiar with. That is our thought life. These are our ideas, the concepts, um, the philosophy that's going on in our head, everything that we can formulate in words. As I said, all the thoughts that we chatter within us all day long. Um, these are all things that belong into the mental sphere. But as well, there is, as opposed to the lower concrete mind, as I just explained, everything that we can put words on, there is a higher abstract plane where thinking happens in a way as we usually don't know it so much yet. This is mostly abstract thinking, let's say, for example, in mathematical formula or something like that, or physics and quantum physics or such things. This is a kind of thinking in abstract realms where words do not reach. This is, as I said, stuff that can be expressed in geometry, or in mathematical formulas or something like that. But this is something that is definitely above words. So this is what we call the higher abstract mind, of
mm,
which we are actually trying to reach, those higher spheres that we can. Well, let's say this is part of our evolutionary goal, to get more of this abstract into the concrete so that we can really handle it. Because usually if you go into the abstract mind, most of us kind of blank out because there are no words for that. So you don't know how to handle this and how to tag this or what to do with it. And so our task is to get into that and to handle that. So these are the three parts that we call the three bodies, our life in the three worlds of human endeavor, because this is where we have our life and our being. And we have this etheric, this material and etheric life grid. Then we have the astral emotions and lots of interactions on layers that you could call as well empathy and even what's it called? It's not telepathy. Is it empathy? Is
empathy? Yes, feeling for others. Empathy would be feeling
for others.
Compassion, empathy.
Yeah, there was this distinction that I was trying to make between the compassion and true empathy. Like you go somewhere, you know how they feel. It's simply there, and maybe eventually in the beginning you're wondering, is this my emotion? Yeah, or is this the emotion of somebody who's in the room maybe, or as I said, some mass emotion that is going on, maybe in a football stadium.
Just hold that point. Yeah, so hold that point there. I just see some stuff coming up in the main chat on this point. I want to hold that point there. So let people absorb this. So these three bodies, and you're mentioning that emotions are in the field all around us. So even in this virtual space here, everyone in here can account for the fact that emotions do transmit through this grid. Also, this is a virtual grid we're in now.
Yes.
And people in ourselves experience emotions just as much as they do anywhere else. Okay, both in here, the emotions that go on in this world, and also the ones when they close the PC down and walk out into the lounge and interact with everyone else, right? So just looking at this, a few questions that are coming through now in the main chat. Geometry's asked, how can we ground and balance these emotions, bearing in mind like we're currently at a sway from all directions with things firing about, not necessarily our own feelings, feelings of people around us, people in the virtual space, people on the social media space. It's coming from all directions. How are we going to ground and balance this? That's the question I've got. Thank you, Joe.
That is, thanks for this question. That is, one of the main aspects of the practical sides of the wisdom. And this is actually where you start. It is something that I would like to put a little bit in the background, although we can talk about it now as well. So let's say there is a meditation technique, or there is various meditation techniques that you can learn through such a school as